Hello and welcome to People in Power. I'm Juliana Rufus. Financial markets around the world are booming. Across every class of assets, from housing to art to stocks and shares, prices are hitting all-time highs. Almost every week a new record is set for mergers and acquisitions or buyouts. So just where is all this money coming from? It's a financial trick called the carry trade. Investors borrow money in a country with low interest rates like Japan or Switzerland and invest in higher yielding currencies or assets. All this borrowed money drives up asset prices and creates huge flows of capital into countries like New Zealand and Iceland, where interest rates are high. Over the past few years, borrowing money via the carry trade has seemed risk-free. But recently, central bankers have been warning that if the yen or the Swiss franc rise, prices can move against investors rapidly and even destabilize the global financial system. Max Kaiser investigates in Iceland.
Iceland's been buying a lot of Britain's high street recently. How does a country with less than 300,000 population, who's got a GDP of $13 billion, less than 1/10 the size of Google, end up buying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of valuable properties here in London and Britain, including the West Ham Football Club?
I believe this financial miracle comes from cheap credit, a fancy word for debt. Never in history has the entire world been so awash in debt. And all this debt begins, many say, with something called the carry trade.
The carry trade. The carry trade usually works that investors take loans in low-yielding currencies, for example, yen or the Swiss franc, and then they buy assets in the high-yielding currencies, in Icelandic kronas, Turkish lira, or Australian dollar.
This carry trade usually begins in the currency markets, otherwise known as the forex markets, the biggest market in the world where $3 trillion worth of trades happen every single day. I'll show you how the carry trade is done. First, I need to borrow some money from a country with low interest rates.
Let's flip this coin to decide. Heads, Tokyo. Tails, Zurich. Tails, Zurich. Whoa! A little bit too much on that one. The forex market can be a very dangerous place. You never know day to day what kind of trades you might encounter, what kind of danger might be out there. Zurich, of course, one of the most dangerous towns in the world if you're not lucky. Now, fortunately, I should have some Swiss francs in my pocket. Exactly. Here's something I can do. With these Swiss francs, I can actually perform a little bit of forex legerdemain. By taking these Swiss francs, and then by jumping back into the forex market, and coming out in another town, I'll show you how we can make some money. Wow, so the currency in Zurich has been magically transformed into the local currency here in Iceland, the Icelandic krona, and I immediately pick up 5, 6, 7% of my money. I didn't get this money by manufacturing or producing or savings. I just got it from interest rate speculating, interest rate arbitrage. Economics appears to have gone through a radical transformation where the king is the speculator and the chump who's caught working for a living in a factory is considered yesterday's news.
Today's news is debt. More and more consumers, corporations, investors, and speculators are taking on more and more debt thanks to low global interest rates. Glenn Stevens, governor of Australia's Reserve Bank, said of Japan's near 0% interest rate policy, quote, "There is something very strange about a G3 country giving out free money. This has an effect on global markets. It is by no means clear that it is a healthy state of affairs to persist."
The governor's probably on the money there, that when you have a situation where the Japanese are effectively giving away their cash, you can borrow it for free for all intents and purposes, or maybe a few basis points, that does have global implications and necessarily would hold the global interest rate environment lower than it otherwise would be.
So all this borrowed money doesn't always end up in the currency. A lot of it goes into real estate, it goes into art. A lot of it goes into fueling mergers and acquisitions, which is part of another piece of the global bubble. It's all so easy with free money. What could possibly go wrong? Whether it's 0% or 2 or 3 basis points, it doesn't really make a heck of a lot of difference because it's still debt. And ordinarily, when there's huge demand for debt, the price of debt or interest rates go higher. But what we're seeing now in the global banking cartel is an agreement, more or less, that when there's more demand for debt, they simply make the parameters to borrow less stringent. They never close the debt window. So what we have is asset bubbles. We have house prices and art markets and stocks and bonds going up in price, but not as fast as the level of debt. So the wealth is completely illusory, unless, of course, this is some kind of financial anti-gravity machine and debt never means anything for the rest of our lives, which, of course, is impossible. Every once in a while, there is a reconciliation in these markets, and you do have the asset bust, the deflation, and the occasional depression.